Hello everyone, welcome to Wicked West Books. My name is Meg West, and today's video is my April wrap-up for 2016. I read a fair amount of books this last month. I'm proud of myself. Let's go ahead and jump into the books. The first book that I read was The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson, and the next book I read was Shadows of Self by Brandon Sanderson, and after that I read The Bands of Mourning by Brandon Sanderson. These are the first 3 books in the 4-book series that takes place on the same planet as Mistborn, but 300 years in the future. If you haven't already read the Mistborn series, this world has 3 different distinct types of magic all around metal. There is allomancy, feruchemy, and hemorrhagy. With allomancy, you ingest a metal, and if you have the ability to burn through that metal in your stomach, it grants you an ability. With feruchemy, you store a trait in metal that you wear, based again on your personal abilities. And hemorrhagy is when you take someone else's ability to use these metals by having a spike driven through them and into you. And this series follows the main character Wax as he goes through and tries to kind of fight crime after he has been living in the roughs, which is very much a Wild West kind of setting. After I finished those 3 books, I picked up Mistborn, The Secret History by Brandon Sanderson. It is a short book, only available as an ebook, and it technically takes place at the end of the Mistborn trilogy, but it's recommended that you don't read it until after the 3rd book from the Alloy of Law series, just because it kind of gives mild spoilers for the Alloy series. It gives massive spoilers for the Mistborn series. And it's kind of an interesting because of who the main character of the story is, but it would be a spoiler for me to give that away. And after reading this book, I'm really hoping that we get some more information in regards to this short story in the 4th and final book of the Alloy of Law series. And after that, and kind of in keeping with my tradition this year, I read the Booksplosion Book of the Month book, which was Second Chance Summer by Morgan Matson. This was my first Morgan Matson book ever, and honestly, I wasn't all that impressed with it. In this book, Taylor, the main character, her father is diagnosed with cancer and lives out his last 3 to 4 months with his children at the lake house that they own, which he remembers very fondly. And they just get to kind of reconnect as a family before he dies in this book. And I found the whole thing to be really, really predictable. He starts trying to live all the life that he doesn't have time to anymore, and in doing this he's watching old movies that used to be his favorite, and he kind of laments on how Casablanca was his favorite movie and he was so sad that he never got to see it on the big screen. Well, Taylor's job for the summer, part of it is to run a once-a-month movie screen. So of course she picks Casablanca and makes his night, and I'm not saying that that's not sweet, it was just very predictable to me. When I finished with Second Chance Summer, I decided that my husband and I needed to do a buddy read, and I got to pick the book this time. Next time he will get to pick the book, but I chose The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. He kind of turned it into a race, which he did win. I was about half the book behind him the entire time. I loved Name of the Wind just as much the second time as I did the first one. I just kind of enjoyed taking my time through it this time, which I did not do last time. And when I finished Name of the Wind, I picked up The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss, which is, of course, the 2nd book in the Kingkiller Chronicles. It is longer than Name of the Wind in my copy is about 400 pages, and I loved it even more than The Name of the Wind. You meet some new characters. I absolutely loved Tempe. He was my favorite character. And you actually get to leave the academy because a lot of the first book is spent at the academy, and in the second one, something happens that kind of forces him to go and explore for a year before he can come back to the university, and I just loved that element of travel. And one of the places he goes to is Ventus, and their social setting, the way that they do that was absolutely fantastic. I loved that you had 3 different rings that you sent with an invitation, and that showed how they were addressing you, whether you got a gold ring and they're viewing you as superior to them, whether you got a silver ring, which shows that this person considers you an equal, or if you got an iron ring, which shows that they think that you are inferior to them. And I thought that was one of my favorite ways for a society to kind of put that information out there. And I loved the Wise Man's Sphere. It was better than Name of the Wind, and I am ready for book 3 to come out, not only so that we can finish Cavill's stories, but in the hopes that he explores even more of this world. And the final book that I read during the month of April is Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. This one came up in my library queue for me to check out and read, and there was no way I was passing on this one. This is the newest book out in the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas, and I've seen that it's been kind of conflicted on whether people love this book or hate this book, and I will say that I liked Selena actually better than Aelin as a main character in the series. You do meet her in the book before this, and anything more than that is kind of spoilery, but I did also like Aelin as a character, and it was nice to see some of the older characters in there. You got some closure from the last book on knowing why a couple of characters were in the last book when they didn't play too much into the main character's plot line. Those paths converged, and it was nice to see where that was going. And I do like who Aelin ends up with, even though I'm very disappointed that my Selena ship has been sunk and is not coming back, because I really, really liked Selena and Chaol together, and that's just not happening anymore, and that's so sad. I once again read a grand total of 8 books in a month, and I am still at least 2 books ahead of my schedule for 100 for the year, so I'm keeping on top of that, at least for now. My steam is starting to die out a little bit, but I'm sure I'll catch a second wind before too long. And that's all I have for this video. I will see you guys next week with a book review of a book that I just finished today, and it will be kind of a weird one, so look forward to that. Have a wicked day. I feel like I'm eating my hair.